Hi, my name is Scott. Thanks for joining us on the Morning Moment this morning. This past week, I was at our Taco Tuesday nights, something we do every week with our young adults. We get together and talk, and we've been actually processing through the parables of Jesus. And in this last week, someone said something that just kind of sunk down into my heart and exploded in the best kind of way. And I've been mulling this idea over, and I feel like God's been speaking more and more about this phrase to me. And so I'm going to invite you into that if you're okay with it. The phrase, we were talking about how we navigate life and we're flawed, and sometimes there's guilt of just flaws and trying to become like Jesus, but not quite doing good enough. And the statement that was made was, he said, Jesus isn't anxious about the parts of us that aren't redeemed. Jesus isn't anxious about the parts of us that aren't redeemed. And the reason I feel like that hit me so hard was I personally am trying to okay, God, how do I become more like you, and how do I invite you into every aspect of my worldview? There's a process that's beautiful in that, but at the same time, Jesus isn't anxious about our redemption process. He has already done the most that he could do, which is die and resurrect for our salvation. And this journey that we are all on is precisely that. It's a journey. And the Lord invites us to consider new aspects of our life. And as we address those aspects, and as God takes control of our heart and helps us overcome the sin that enslaves us, he redeems us. But in that process of our shortcomings, where we're not good enough, where we're not being successful at any level, sometimes we get very anxious about that. Yet, Jesus is not anxious about that. To kind of paint an analogy of what I feel like God showed me with this is, I have my little dog Indy that you've heard about, and to get her to roll over is the trick of the year. It's been taking a long time, and so I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos as to how to teach her to roll over. And at first I was just like, all right, we got to roll over, and I force her body, and it just wasn't working. And she was getting frustrated, and I was getting frustrated. It was just not working. But then the trainer taught me, no, you got to look at rolling over as a multi-step process. First, you got to sit. Then you got to lay down. Then you got to go to your side. And then after your side, what you do is you take the treat and you position in a way to where her head wants to go with that treat. And as her head moves, it actually kind of forces her body to roll over. And you reinforce this habit, you reinforce this motion, unbeknownst to her, that she's rolling over. And after you do that enough, you begin to associate language to it. And you begin to associate other patterns, so that over a period of time, this multi-step process becomes one fluid movement. I feel like God spoke to me in that and said, this is the process of redemption. God knows where he's trying to get us. He knows who he's created us and called us to be. But we're not there yet. And so there's a process of us having to learn to sit, of us having to learn to lay down. And Indy hates laying down because our tile floor is cold, and she hates being cold, but she does it because she trusts me most of the time. And then the process continues to move, and I feel like what God's word for me was to recognize I'm in a multi-step process. There's an end goal and there's a beautiful result that's coming, but in the process, there are steps that he's leading us through, not to force us, but to guide us in an exciting way into a new adventure, into new fun, into new beauty with him. And so I leave you with the verse that Jesus says, behold, I am making all things new. And that includes you. And that making new isn't a restriction on you. It's not confining. Rather, it's blowing our minds in terms of what's even possible, because he has come to give us life and life abundantly. But in that process, sometimes we have to let go, and we have to recognize that God is moving us through a multi-step process to help us become the sons and daughters of the King that he has called us to be. And that invitation excites me. It's not a condemnation of guilt, but it's an invitation into the fullness of who Christ is and who he has created us to be. And that excites me. So may you not be anxious about your process of redemption and the things that are happening in life that aren't happening in your timeline, but may you find peace and rest in becoming who God has created you to be, one day and one movement at a time. Have a great week. See you soon.